All right, I'm here with the great John Rooke, voice of the Friars, member of the Rhode Island Radio Hall of Fame, someone who's been in broadcasting and journalism for over 35 years. I appreciate your time, appreciate your wisdom for sure. And with that wisdom, it has been an eventful, to say the least, 2 months kind of in Providence Friar country. What's your kind of early thoughts on just what Kim English has been able to do? I feel like kind of been able to switch the narrative from Cooley leaving to Kim English being hired. But what are your thoughts in these first couple months?
My first impression, Nathan, was I was impressed by his energy, his enthusiasm, his youthful vibrance. Not that Ed didn't have it, not that anybody else hasn't had it. I mean, I think that kind of goes with the territory. But it struck me as that he knows that it's necessary to be able to do that in this day and age. And I think one of the things that seems to be a real conundrum for a lot of coaches is the whole NIL issue and how to utilize that and utilize the transfer portal, and how do you not forget about recruiting high schools and prep schools, and you got to find that right balance. But Kim gave me the impression that he really embraces all of it. And so I think it was a really good first impression. I haven't really had much of a chance yet to sit down and talk with him because he's been busy and we're still a ways away from the season. So I'm sure we'll take care of that as well as the assistants throughout the course of the summer. But my first impression was extraordinarily favorable. I mean, like everybody else, I mean, you knew the name. Oh, yeah, George Mason, right? And then beyond that, I mean, he'd only been a head coach for a couple of years. I remember him when he was a draft pick and played for the Pistons. And it wasn't that long ago. So that one caught me a little bit. Is that the same guy? Yeah, that's the same guy. So I got to tell you, at least my initial impression is his energy, his enthusiasm, and then his buy-in. And the players seemed to buy in really quickly. And his best recruiting job had to have been, making sure everybody stayed intact on the roster, because we all thought that, this next year's team would have a good chance to be back in the tournament again. And I definitely think that's the case this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually got to know him a little bit in my coverage of the Atlantic 10. So I had several conversations with him. So I knew the youth factor, the embracing, like you said. I think embracing the new culture of college basketball is important. You got a lot of coaches that aren't there yet. And you talked about the, retaining. I think obviously in this day and age, I think retaining players on your team is just as important as getting them. How surprised were you? Specifically, I look at a guy like Garway, to have him commit, someone who hasn't even been to Providence, hasn't played for Providence, sorry, but to actually stay and commit to him. How surprising, or how surprised were you with that?
Very. Can't lie. Yeah. Very surprised. We know that he the previous coaching staff was enamored with him and his ability. I know that there were a lot of comparisons that were made to, being a Chris Dunn type of player at the time, and the fact that it tells me that he really loved the atmosphere and the school. We know he loved the coach. That's why kids go to school. They go to school for the coaches. We know this, but it tells me that he was impressed with the atmosphere. Obviously the crowd, the fans, the amp. The few times that he had been there, and then I really think what Kim offered was exactly what this team needed at this time, and they needed credibility. The younger generation these days, and I'm sure there'll be some that are be watching, listening to this pod, and I hope so, because they can learn a lot, from guys like you and guys who cover the team on a regular basis and try to give their largely their unbiased opinion. I also try to do the same, even though I've worn pinch me, I bleed black for 35 years, right? But here's the thing: you always try to give an accurate picture, and I think the accurate picture here is the kids today, no matter where you are, they need immediate street cred. They need that from the coaches. They need buy-in. They need to know, Coach, where can you take me? Where can I go? Is that the pros? Fine. Is that the NBA? But can I make money off of this? Can I do this? And of course, now NIL enters into all of this stuff. And his credibility with the players, I think is off the charts. And the story of him, playing Jaden one-on-one, for a chance to pull out of the portal, that is found gold, is what that was. And that gave him immediate credibility, not only with the players, I think, but that gave him credibility with a lot of people around the country that cover college basketball. I thought it was a cool story. And, hey, our coach can, beat yours one-on-one. You know how, fans like to go back and forth. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is that this guy's been in the NBA. He's played at a Power 5, Power 6 school, so he's been in a high major program. He's assisted under some legendary coaches. He's got an unbelievable resume for being so young. Yeah. And that catches your attention. It caught my attention. I think it's caught the players' attention. Clearly, I think it worked on everybody on that Providence roster that has stuck around, and they want to run it back for this next year. And I think that's a huge factor in exactly what PC needed after Ed's departure.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think, you look. Sometimes they say, well, it's just about getting, the right coach is going to win you games. Of course, when it comes down to it, it's all about that. But I do think Providence, as you mentioned, was in this unique situation. They didn't need just a good hire, but someone who could kind of, again, switch the narrative. That's what's been so impressive for me, even with what Knapp was able to do, holding off the press conference for a week, building that up. Because, perception, kids are making decisions daily. So, perception of Providence was not Cooley left, what are they going to do? It's Cooley left, this is an amazing program, and now you have this new coach who's ready for the job. I just thought it was massive.
Yeah, you mentioned the word program. That's actually where we are, and I think that's what everybody needs to remember when they consider Ed Cooley's legacy. Because I know, he didn't leave here in the best of terms, because I think a lot of people were upset by his abrupt departure, and I understand all that, and I'm sure Ed does too. But we can't forget that he brought this program pretty much where he said he was going to. They won a couple of Big East titles, but more importantly, they brought relevancy to the program, and they brought legitimacy to the program. The Providence is not the Providence that it was under the old 15-16 team Big East. Before the Big East blew up on itself back in 2013. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years ago, and we're getting ready to, go into year 11 this next year. But what he brought was, relevancy, and I think that's a big reason why these kids have stuck around, because they know here they can win. And anybody who thinks otherwise just isn't paying attention. And they're thinking about, Providence basketball maybe from 20 or 30 years ago. And look, Providence has always won. The Big East was a bit of a challenge. And I think even Dave Gavitt probably knew that, years ago when Providence was in there. But there's no way he's going to leave out his alma mater or his school, not his alma mater, but, his school, and the school that had the history, under both him and Joe Mulaney before that. So this was a way to build the program up. And when you go up against schools who, have some of the size factor and the budget, and, they're in a little bit different geographic locations where they can appeal to so much more than what we can get here nestled on this little burg, off the side of I-95 between, Boston and New York. You have a tendency to, ooh, wow, I missed it. You blink and you miss it. I think you have to realize that this was a little bit tougher than initially realized. And Ed had brought everything back to the table to where now this is a legitimate thought. And then the facilities at Providence are unparalleled. And this is where, Bob Driscoll and Father Shanley deserve all of the credit to, doing what Ed asked. And they did everything Ed asked them to do. And I'm not sure there was anything else Steve Knapp could have done. Providence has everything they need to be successful and win. And if they don't, it's on coaching. And so that's why it was important, I think, for Kim to come off and have a really good, first impression, because I think he realizes he's right. And this is what I appreciate about Kim. He's said this from day one. We got everything we need here to win. This place is locked and loaded and ready to go. Great. Gosh, that's really wonderful to hear. Now let's go. Let's see what you can do. Let's see what kind of offense you're going to run. What kind of plays do you call out of timeouts? That kind of thing. Which all coaches get criticized for, right? And occasionally we might offer an opinion or two on, but when you've been around the game as long as myself and Joe have been around, you have a tendency to pick up at least a couple of things through osmosis, if nothing else, right? And Joe obviously played the game at a very high level, and I've been around it at a very high level for a long time. So there are a few things you recognize that work.
Yeah. And
you have to have that connection. Ed's connection was sort of familial with his players, and he took a lot of his, inner city street charm to those players in embracing them and in being a father-like figure to many of those kids over the dozen years that he was at Providence. Kim is bringing, I think, a youthfulness, an immediacy, talent, obviously, that he can still, do it on the floor as well as coach it. He's got a great track record. He's got people vouching for him. I was impressed, like everybody else, that Rick Barnes spoke out as well as he did on Kim. And there are a lot of people around here that still love Rick Barnes. I still love Rick Barnes, so, and if it hadn't been for, financial factors 20, 30 years ago, who knows, he might still be here. Who knows if we've been able to get, Tim Duncan and people like that to come here if he hadn't gone off to Clemson. I mean, there's so much that Providence is so close to. You cannot tell me that this program can't win. It can. And this is the first time, the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe really since I think 2014 when they won the Big East tournament in the first year of the current Big East. Probably the first time in the last 10 years, that was the first time I realized, you know what? These guys can actually win. I remember talking to Pete Thamel about that. And, he's like, you really think you guys could actually win at Providence? And I said, Pete, you're going to think I'm an idiot. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I do. And here's why. There's a connection there that's being made, and the kids are buying in, and the facilities are being built. And this is before the Ruane Center ever came into play. And, if you haven't been to the Ruane Center, and this is for anybody who's listening, you got to go. And your eyes are going to bug out of your head. Your jaw's going to drop, and you're going to say, wow, there are NBA facilities that aren't as good as this one.
Yep.
And that is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle in recruiting at Providence, because I think we all know what the, definitive problems are in trying to get, kids, to come to the little burg, as I said, off of I-95 between Boston and New York. It's not the easiest place to go, but you can't tell me you can't recruit to come here. And there's so many. Jeff Goodman and I have had this argument for years. It's Providence. Well, yeah, it's Providence, but you know what? You're still right in the hotbed of all the New England prep schools. And if you can't recruit the New England prep schools by being a New England power, then what the hell are you doing? You shouldn't be in this profession. Right. So I went off on a tangent there for you, but I mean, I'm passionate about it, and I hope that shows a little bit. And I think you can win at Providence, and I'm anxious to see what Kim can do.
No, you answered. That was great, because you answered my question was going to be obviously the legacy of Cooley in terms of building this program up to where it is, the facilities as well. I think, I don't know if it was Kim or one of his assistants recently when I was talking to them, they said, we just got to get these recruits here to see the practice facility.
Yes.
They're going to be wowed, So I'm fully on board with everything, obviously, that you just said. And more, obviously, you've been there, the ins and outs. And that kind of leads me to, all right, here is the program. We have the facilities, but now we look at NIL, right? It seems as if I am not intimate with Providence NIL. I don't know how intimate you are with it, but it is established. It seems like it's a well-oiled machine. They have money there. They've been able to keep guys, pay people. What is that next step for Providence? Is it continue just to build? And then I think this is a bigger talk about, we could go on tangents forever, but with NIL, we're obviously in the thick of things. People are, flying by the seat of their pants and what they're going to do with this. But what ultimately is program building now with NIL, and is Providence in the place to do that?
Well, first of all, Providence was out in front in the Big East in NIL. It was one of the first schools, one of the first basketball programs, and one of the first athletic departments to set up a collective. And so I'm familiar with the Fryer Family Collective. I know a bunch of those guys that worked there. Several of them worked inside the athletic department once upon a time when they were here previously, and they've gone into the professional world, but came back to so they could kind of reconnect with the athletic program and the basketball program in particular, and that's great. And so they sort of set some standards for other schools in the conference to follow. Now, look, the Providence Collective is not going to be, I think we all realize, without football, it's a different deal here. But what you sell, in addition to the facilities and the coaches and the school, the campus, the great education, you sell all of that. But what you sell on top of that is, well, look, we can give you opportunities here in the media, to do things and like you can get in other places. We don't have football, but what we do have is basketball is number one. And if you want to be the big cheese, if you want to be the BMOC, the big man on campus, if you want to be, in the spotlight, you want to play Madison Square Garden, you want to be there with 13,000 screaming people in the amp, next to you every game. And by the way, season tickets being sold out. Remarkable. Now, that's something I never thought I would see. I never thought I would see that. We've had some great crowds. We've had crowds, average well over 10,000 in my 35 years now. We've never sold every single season ticket. And we've had some really great people, but started with, Lou Lamoriello, who was on his way out when I first came in, and then John Marinato, and then Bob Driscoll, and now Steve Napolillo. And that's a wow factor. And coaches that can embrace that culture and just basically be who they are. And I know that was a concern, I think, somewhat of the previous staff. I'm not sure why, because the previous staff had everything to do with setting this up and getting out ahead of everybody else in the Big East. Okay. So I'm not sure why that's a problem. And that's another story maybe for another day. But I think Providence has been out in front on a lot of this. And I think a lot of other schools have seen what the Friars have done with their collective. And, look, are you going to be able to reap millions and millions of dollars? Probably not. Yeah. Probably not, because you don't have football. And football is the 800-pound gorilla in the in the locker room. We know this, we recognize this, but that's not who these schools are. Yeah. So be who you are, and be who you are to the recruits, and they either want to come based on what you have, or if they need the NIL, then I would say two things. Number one, good luck to you. Number two, maybe you need to go find another school anyway that can pay you, or maybe you need to consider to go to Overtime Elite or the G League straight or something, because, if you're interested that much in money, maybe you need to go pro. Yeah. So, I mean, call me crazy, but I'd go to college for the experience. College, hey, is an unbelievable 4 years if you do it the right way. And if you're a student athlete and you've got some of the advantages now that student athletes have today, oh man, you mean I can go and play and I get a scholarship to go to school and I can make a little something on the side? I'm in. Sell me. I'm going. I'm in. Hey, I'm in. I can go play at Madison Square Garden. I can be on Fox television come on. That's an unbelievable tool. And if you sell that the proper way, then listen, you're going to get your share of special kids and special athletes. And I don't care what sport you're playing. I know we're primarily talking about men's basketball here, but you can do that. And I think the Providence coaches can do that. And we're going to get a chance to see how well it pays off.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I feel like too, the NIL, are there certain, everyone points to like Miami, or maybe a Kansas. Oh, you got 800,000, these figures get, thrown around. The majority, I would say 99% of these athletes, there's a certain amount of money you have to have that people expect, even if you're, not the highest impact player, right? And Providence, I would say, has that. I think most schools, if you have a good collective, you're not going to lose players because of NIL. Like, I don't think Providence is in that position. They're in a strong position.
No,
at all.
I don't think they're going to lose. Yeah, I don't think they're going to lose players either. But I know there will be some that say, well, maybe they lost Lance Ware, and I'll bring that up as a case because he was the most recent recruit. Yeah. And I would tell you, well, there was more at work than just NIL at play, because you got to look at what's under the cover. Fact of the matter is that the Friars have a starting center. His name's Josh Oduro.
Yep.
That's the reason they brought him in. And Lance was going to come in and be a 15 to 20-minute guy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Villanova offers him, at least to my way of thinking, Villanova may offer him more playing time if they decide, because I think Eric Dixon is more of a natural 4 than a 5 anyway, to be honest with you. So if they put Ware at the 5 and Dixon at the 4, watch out. Yeah. And so I think that's part of the issue. And I think the other part is that, maybe because a guy like Cam Whitmore is already gone and maybe they had, some extra NIL money that they could throw his way. I don't know about those rumors of him, being 6 and 7 figures. I don't know. Hey, look, if the kid can get it.
Yeah.
Bravo, go get it. Hey, I would tell you life is short-lived, but, do you want your short-term 6 and 7 figure money, or do you want an opportunity to win and create, an opportunity for yourself to go play professionally someplace?
Yeah.
And to me, that's what I would want. And so that's why, I'm biased toward the Big East, I think, in this regard. But whether it's the Big East, whether it's Big 12, SEC, Big 10, shoot, even the Atlantic 10, to a little bit lesser extent, just because of some of the markets and the size of those schools. But I mean, you can pick and choose a really good spot for you in a lot of different places in this country.
Yep.
A lot of different places. It really depends on the nature of the kid. And a kid that is going to a school based on how much money the school can pay him with NIL is probably not a kid that A, is going to be around for the long haul, and B, a kid that you want to spend a lot of time dealing with.
Yeah, no, definitely. Do you agree? I mean, are you, and I want to, this could be, I want to definitely want to wrap it up. I don't want to take too much of your time, but NIL in general, I think obviously there are some regulations and things that have to be in place. I think everyone knows that it's new, but would you agree that it is a positive for college basketball in a sense? I mean, I would say, you look at the G League professional options in Europe, I do think to keep NCAA basketball the way it is and people want it to be, this had to happen. I do think there needs to be, again, regulation a little bit, but I do think it is important. And yes, players, we're not going to have the 4-year players anymore, but you're going to have the passion for the program, and kids are going to stay an extra year. I think we are seeing that. Stars will stay because they can make enough money.
Yeah, look, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that, wishes we could still have, some of that old school atmosphere that kids would go to school, stay 4 years, get their degree, and then if they're good enough, they go on to the pros and play. But I think we realized that, with the introduction of, the transferring and the NCAA making so much money that it makes off of, these, young men and women, especially when it comes NCAA tournament time, that is the cash cow, as I think everybody understands, that there had to be some extra payback, if you will, to the student athletes. Otherwise, someone's going to sue you for it, and you're invariably going to lose. So, I think the NCAA, and I'm hoping this is where Charlie Baker, can do some good as the grand poobah, as I like to call him, of the NCAA, and maybe he can get some guidance from, Mr. Dan Gavitt as well along the ways as the VP for basketball. But fact of the matter is that, it wasn't going away. It was going to be a continual issue. And it's best that you embrace that, there's just so much money out there. This is not your big brothers, your uncles, your fathers, your grandfathers' college basketball anymore. It's just not. The sport has changed. And the quicker you realize that and the quicker you adapt to that, the more successful, the better chance you have to be, I should say, to be successful. And I think the Friars have begun to embrace that. Like I said, they were kind of out in front within the Big East schools. They're kind of out in front on the whole collective issue and the NIL thing. So, I think I have to admit, I'm one of those old school people that thinks, well, shoot, you're going to go to school nowadays. You're talking about, with the cost of tuition and books and fees and dorms and everything. You're looking at student athletes for 4 years. They get well over $250,000. That's a lot of money to go to school. But you don't realize that when we're talking billions with a B, billions when it comes to the revenue that the NCAA generates largely through the tournament and the other things that the NCAA does, they deserve, because we are receiving already. And so we got to figure out a way equitable way to do this. And I think we're moving that way. I think what a lot of administrators, a lot of ADs, and a lot of media people and a lot of presidents, school presidents would tell you is that they would love Charlie Baker, the NCAA, to say, this is the law. We're laying the law down. This is the rule for everybody to follow. But I see that's also, I kind of think, where we get in trouble. Because a lot of these schools, certainly, in the football five, if you will, a lot of these schools don't want to be told what to do. That's why you hear so much about these schools breaking away and creating their own thing, which would be a huge mistake. They want to go, let them go, because eventually, you know what they're going to become? They're going to become AAA for the NBA, or they're going to become, AAA for the NFL, or whatever it's going to be. And it's really going to be professional, but it won't truly be amateur. But what is amateur nowadays anyway? Yep. So amateur, the whole phraseology around the term amateur has changed because of the money that this amateur organization is making. So we got to figure out a way to share equitably in the success of the sport. And I think that's what we're struggling to find. And I hope the NCAA, I don't think they're going to be able to come up with a magic bullet, but I hope they're able to give us some guidelines where we can say, look, here's how we want you to operate. And we are going to come back and check on you from time to time. And we are going to slap you on the wrist if we need to be able to do it. Hey, it's already happened in Miami, for instance, right? That happened, with the Cavender twins, I think, were all over TikTok and all that kind of stuff. So, that kind of thing is, we're going to need more. We're going to need more enforcement, and so the enforcement part of the NCAA is going to have to continue to get stronger, I think, for us to be able to keep this somewhat in check. Otherwise, it will blow up, and there won't be room for small schools at the table. And I think that's our biggest issue and our biggest challenge facing college athletics today, especially college basketball.
Yeah. No. Well said. Well said. And again, you said, I like that you brought up Big B, because I think sometimes people say, it's almost like they expect something like NIL as if it's going to go smoothly or figure it out. And like you said, this is $1 billion industry. There's so many different factors. There's no way to even. Yeah,
it's gonna go on for a while.
Yeah, early stage.
Yeah, it
looks like.
But. Yeah, it's gonna change maybe year to year, Nathan. It's gonna what we have and what we know this year may be different next year.
Absolutely.
And certainly the transfer portal is going to have a lot to say about that. So, and vice versa. Whether or not, guy's not getting NIL, but I could go to another school and get more NIL, but he's already used his one-time free pass transfer. He ain't going to go because he wants to play ball. I mean, at some point in time, you got to decide for yourself, is this a business or am I trying to play ball? Yep. Is this a business or do I really value an education? And that's up to the individual. And I think the guys that you want to recruit, and I think the guys that Providence has made a really strong history on recruiting, have been kids that have included education in the process. And I think those are the ones you have to embrace because those are the ones that you're going to keep happiest.
Yep. No, most definitely. Listen, John, I appreciate the time. Like I said at the beginning, I value your wisdom. Oftentimes I feel like it's not as valued. Not you. I'm just saying in general. People have been around the game. You guys speak to these
great
things.
That's a great way, Nathan, of calling me old. I appreciate that. Thank
not
you.
At all. Not at all. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, "Wow, I age myself. I'm about 36." They said you're old. So we're everyone's old to someone. Wisdom just needs to know a lot more than me. And that's what I
got 36. I got 36-year-old T-shirts in my drawer in the other room over here. What? You're not going to ask you how many points a game Bryce Hopkins is going to score next year?
No. Got a long way to go, but
yeah, we do. That's the excitement of it, though.
It is.
I would tell you right off the bat, I'd love to see the Friars, if the opportunity presents itself, love to see them pick up an extra big body. Lance Ware would have been great, but understood he's got a better opportunity somewhere else, and that's what's going to happen. Yeah. I feel sorry for the kids who put their name in the portal and then they don't get a sniff. And then they had a scholarship somewhere and now they got nothing. And that's the downside that people don't realize.
Definitely.
And so when you go into the portal, you better be sure that you got a reasonable opportunity to land at one or two spots of the schools that are on your list. You may get calls, and I love to see all these kids that put out on social media. I'm hearing from these 30 schools. Really? Yeah. Okay. So which one are you going to? They like the recruiting process. They like the attention.
Yep.
But you better find a sugar daddy in there somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to be left, with your hands out, and you're not going to have room to go anywhere. And that's the huge downside to all of this. So that's the part of the free market society now that we've enabled our student athletes to get into that they don't really realize yet.
Yeah. No,
and they're going to learn. And so I do think that, in the next couple of years, we'll probably see this come down just a little bit to a manageable level. And we mix in maybe some guidance, from Congress or the NCAA or whoever decides they're going to get involved here. And then we can find something manageable and pliable, like a ball of clay that we can sort of shape and move around and change up from year to year over the next decade or two until, we decide to shape shift and play Transformers and send, schools off to Mars.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right.
Yeah. And I think they do. I think Providence will find that piece. And it may be, for fans, sometimes it's like, oh, we're missing. I don't think necessarily you're missing. I do think right now there's still so much availability where you're having guys who, like you said, the role is very specific on Providence right now. Now, obviously everyone competes for a position. No one, has it set in stone, but like you said, it's about 10, 15 minutes a time. A lot of guys right now can be promised others. I think, you'll find that player that actually fits that mold,
Right. Yes. Yeah. You have to hope that you have a really good assistant staff. They, not only are they on top of the high school recruits, which, still have to be the basis for what you're doing, but you got to have somebody that, comes in, and we know a few programs have hired general managers.
Yes.
Right. To manage the portal, manage NIL, manage opportunities, this and that. Villanova's done that, and a couple of other schools have done that. And that may be the way a lot of programs tend to go, is someone that can take care of the business aspect of college basketball and let the coaches actually do what they do best: recruit, teach, coach.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Don't envy being a college coach now. It's a 365, but
it's a different business.
Everyone's getting paid a little bit more, so that just comes with, like you said, it comes with the territory. But
for sure.
Well, like I said, thank you again. Enjoy your summer. We'll be in touch. Have to have you back on, sometime during the season.
Be my pleasure. Anytime. You let me know.